from everybody. Let's see, meeting is being recorded, just so everyone knows in case folks want to have a listen who aren't able to make it today. So this is our big welcome to all of our students, new and old. Nobody's too old. And we're just so excited that our FCE program has been funded for another 4 years by the National Science Foundation. And we thought, you know, at the beginning of the semester, we often meet with our students to say hello and welcome new folks. But we thought today was extra special, you know, because we are launching a new phase of the Florida Coastal Everglades LTER program. And we thought it would be great if you guys could meet a few of the cover page principal investigators and get to know a little bit about us and the new program that you're going to be involved in. And so you're going to see on the screen, well, Mike Griggy helped organize everything, and he's our project manager, and he runs all the day-to-day operations of the program behind the scenes. And John Komanowski is here, and he's our incoming principal investigator, and you're going to be seeing a lot more from John moving forward. And the next year, he's going to be taking the reins of the program. And I'll give a few seconds for everybody to say hi, but just to, so you know the co-PIs, there's Jen Rehage, and Kevin Grove and Jim Forkren, who are all our leaders for moving into what we're calling our FCE 4. We're in our 4th phase, 4.2, for these next 4 years. So I see a lot of students coming in, but why don't we start with just hellos from Mike and the PIs, and then we'll move into just a quick overview of what the program's about, and then have each of the co-PIs say a bit about the different themes that are a part of the program. And then we also have our student group represented by Chloe and all the e-board members. Not everybody could be here this morning, but Chloe will give us a few words of introduction of the different e-board members and what the e-board is all about, what the student group is all about. Okay, so Mike, do you want to give a quick hello, and then we'll go around the PIs?
Sure. I'm Mike Griggy. I'm the program manager for FCE, as Evelyn mentioned, and I do manage a lot of the day-to-day operations, not so much the field stuff, but more the budget, travel, programmatic aspects of the program. So if you, a lot of times I work with students helping with travel, and if you finding meeting rooms, things like that. If you have questions, just reach out to me or Evelyn, and we'll try to help.
Okay, thanks, Mike. John, you want to say hello?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm John Komanowski. I'm an ecosystem ecologist and a co-PI in the FCE LTER, and just really excited to start our renewal phase of FCE 4. And yeah, so I'll be transitioning, as Evelyn said, to lead, but I've been trained really well by all of you all, and I feel really, you know, up to the task and just grateful for the opportunity. So thank you.
Jen, you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Jen Rehage. I'm a fish ecologist and a co-PI on the cycle. I've been involved with SCE for, oh my goodness, like 10 years or something at different levels. And we have, as you may know, we have one of the most active student groups in the network. We've received many awards for this. Our students are praised in the entire network. So we are excited to welcome you all to this amazing student group, because it's just amazing what you guys do. So welcome.
Kevin?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Kevin Grove. I'm a professor in geography here at FIU in Global and Social Cultural Studies. I've been involved in FCE program in various ways. Since I came to FIU, I think 5 or 6 years ago now. So a big thanks to Evelyn and John and Mike for all their work getting us across the line on our renewal grant. I'm looking forward to getting to know all of you.
Jim?
Yeah, hi, I'm Jim Forkran. I'm a biogeochemist and community ecologist. Work a lot in seagrass beds and mangroves and a little bit of coral reef work. I've been involved in the FCE since before we had an FCE in 2000. I was a cover page PI on the first proposal, and now I'm back on as a cover page PI on this one. And I don't want to repeat anything anyone said, so let me welcome you all who are new to Miami. I hope that you're exhilarated by the pace of life in Miami, even during COVID, so welcome.
Cool. So why don't we go around and all the students, you could just give us your name and the lab that you're in and maybe what you're working on in the Everglades. And I'll just go around in a loop. I think everybody's organized differently on everybody's screen. So Sarah Casaredo, I see you first, and then Chloe. So Sarah.
Hi everybody, my name's Sarah. I'm in Dr. Hatehouse's lab, and actually Kirk sent me this email saying that I should listen in since we're still working on developing exactly what project I'm going on, but I know that they have a lot of different projects that had been going on at the Everglades and working with bull sharks and dolphins there, so just gonna jump in and kind of see what's going on and broaden my mind a little bit. Also, if I am periodically disappearing, it's because I have a puppy and he's needy and starts whining if I don't pay attention to him every 5 minutes. So that is me trying to calm him down. Sorry.
I get it. I have one in the background too that occasionally comes by and says, no, you need to pay attention to me.
Yes, exactly. I gave him a peanut butter ball, so I'm hoping that'll keep him occupied for the next hour.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah,
Chloe,
I'm happy to be here.
Oh, great. Wonderful to have you.
That's
Chloe,
one
and
dog.
Yeah.
My dog would probably love to have a peanut butter ball right now. That's like that. The dog's lucking out today. So my name is Chloe Vorseth. I am the vice president of the FCE student group. The president, John Rodeman, couldn't be here today because he's actually out in the field. So, yep, great for John. He's out there, I think, on Florida Bay or somewhere. Maybe Jennifer Rehage knows, I don't know. But he's probably doing something really cool, catching fish. But yeah, I am a grad student of Dr. Mahadev Bhatt, who's actually in agroecology, but he's also an environmental economist. And I also am an Everglades, for Everglades fellow at the Everglades Foundation in Cutler Bay. So I go there and I work with my advisor, Dr. Andrew Steinbach, who's an environmental economist there. And then I also work at FIU under Dr. Bhatt. Currently, I'm trying to figure out how to execute a willingness to pay survey and a travel cost survey for Lake Okeechobee in the northern estuaries. So just with the recent developments of algal blooms and all of the complications with water management in Lake Okeechobee, I'm interested in understanding the value of it as a recreational fishery and also the willingness of anglers to pay for potentially better management practices. So that's just a summary of what I do. So yeah.
Important work. Thanks for what you do. Sophia and then Paige.
Hey, I'm Sophia. I'm one of the new techs in John Komanowski's lab, and I am leading the Northeast Shark River Slough data collection and continuing the sampling there this semester next.
Wonderful. Welcome, Paige.
Hi, I'm Paige Kleindl. I'm an incoming student in Dr. Evelyn Geiser's lab, and I don't know exactly what I'm going to be working on in the Everglades, but I've been helping out with a project in Upper Taylor Slough, looking at some of the recently collected long-term monitoring data with algae and diatoms. So not sure what the project's going to be yet that I'm going to be working on, but we're going to talk about that soon.
Cool. Exciting. Welcome, Kenny and then Aaron.
Hi, I'm Kenny. I recently moved to John Komanowski's lab after some COVID-related woes, but I'm excited to be part of the FCE now, and I'm going to be working on some things with detrital communities across the Everglades.
Yay, I'm glad you're a part of us now. Aaron and then Josh.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Aaron Hogan. I'm in Chris Baralotto's lab, kind of tangentially involved in the FCE. I'm trying to wrap up a project on some photosynthesis work that we did at Taylor 7. So glad to be here. Glad everyone's here. Looking good.
Great. Thanks, Aaron. Josh and then Katie.
Hey, everyone. My name is Josh. I am a first-year master's student. My major advisor is Dr. Rehage, and I'm going to be doing some research over in the North Central Florida Bay coastal lakes ecosystems, looking at nutrient sources and trophic dynamics.
Wonderful. Welcome. Katie and then Lulu.
Hi, everybody. My name is Katie Stansberry. I'm a second-year PhD student in Evelyn's lab, and my project is going to be focusing on the role of a specific species of diatom in Everglades periphyton.
Great. Lulu and then Jordan.
I'm Lulu. I'm a first-year PhD student in Jen Rehage's lab. This is my first semester, so I'm really interested in fisheries ecology and movement ecology. I'm still working out sort of my project. Yeah, I spent the past year kind of working in the LTER, the Luquillo LTER in Puerto Rico. So yeah, I'm excited to be involved.
Very good. Neat to have multiple LTER experiences. That's great. Jordan and then Selena.
Hi, everybody. Great to see some of the old faces. I haven't seen in a while, and welcome to the new students. My name is Jordan Massey. I work with Jennifer Rehage, and I'm beginning my 4th year as a PhD student, and I'm former treasurer of the FCE LTER student group. And we work primarily in fish ecology. I work in the Shark River of the Everglades, and we put a lot of focus on seasonal changes in community structure, and also a lot of emphasis on movement and things like flow and other environmental variables that may trigger movement and change with extreme disturbance.
Great, thanks, Jordan. Selena and then Andrea.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Selena. I am now a 3rd-year PhD student in the program under Shimon Wodowinski. We're also known as the Geodesy Lab, and I'm also the current secretary for the FCE student group. And my project primarily focused on using remote sensing, and I'm trying to use different remote sensing techniques to study the effects of Hurricane Irma on the mangroves, and also trying to track their recovery through the years, and then try to kind of build these techniques so that we can then quickly assess future storm impacts on the areas.
Fantastic, great. Andrea and then Hamadri.
Hey, good morning. My name is Andrea. I'm a postdoc in John Komanowski's laboratory. I've been working for the last 2 years on a project that looked at the effect of fire, phosphorus, nitrogen, and carbon cycling in the Everglades. Actually, I'll be soon transitioning to a new position with Everglades National Park. So, but I'll still be LTER. So I hope I'll still be involved and keep working and collaborating with the LTER here in the Everglades.
Really happy for you, Andrea. Congratulations. It's just
Thank you,
wonderful that
Evelyn.
you'll be
Thank you.
in that great position at the park right down the road.
Thanks.
Hamadri, and then last but not least, I think, is Ryan. So Hamadri.
Hi, good morning to you all. My name is Himadri Biswas. I am a PhD student at the Department of Earth and Environment and a member of South Florida Terrestrial Ecology Lab, Softail, in the MMC campus, and also a part of FCE student group. My major advisor is Dr. Michael Ross, and I'm being co-advised by Dr. Daniel Gann from the Department of Biology. I am researching on mangrove transgression, specifically focusing on how the distribution of red mangroves are changing over time using remote sensing techniques, and how they relate to environmental factors such as water depth and topography.
Fantastic. And Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Bremen. I'm a new research assistant in John's lab, and I'm working primarily on a mangrove recovery project in the Everglades, co-PI'd by Edward Castaneda, and we're looking at how the mangroves have recovered following Hurricane Irma.
We heard you were abandoned in the field, or not abandoned, but stuck in the field yesterday. I'm glad you were able to get out.
Yeah, we had some boat problems, but
yeah,
we made it back, thankfully.
Good, thank goodness. All right, well, it's just wonderful to meet everybody. Did we get everybody? Is there anybody else on the phone or otherwise attending that I didn't call out? Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to turn it over from here to John, and John's going to give you a little overview of the program, and then we'll hear from the other PIs and also from a little bit more detail on the student group from Chloe. So thanks, John. Cool.
Hey, y'all, welcome again. And I'm sharing my screen. I'm sure everyone can see, right? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Awesome, so I just wanted to show a few slides, and other folks that are talking after me, other PIs are welcome to, might find some of these slides of use to them as well, so I'll leave that up to them to use. But basically, I just wanted to talk a little bit about where we're heading in FCE 4.2. So it's really exciting that we can now pursue these ideas that really developed between the end of FCE 3 and the onset of FCE 4 about this understanding the ecology of pulses. So Bill Odom authored a paper with his father and his uncle in 1995 in the journal Estuaries, which is now Estuaries and Coasts, which Jim Forkran is the president of the society, the CERF, Confederation of Estuarine and Research Federation. Sorry, Jim, I kind of butchered that title, but the president of the Society of the Journal of Estuaries and Coasts. And in that
John,
paper,
it's Coastal and Estuarine Research Federation.
Coastal and Estuarine Research Federation. Thanks, Jim. So in that paper, Odom, or we call it triple Odom, Odom talks about the pulsed nature of the Everglades. And it was actually his dissertation, Bill Odom's dissertation, was in the Everglades. And of course, during his time, the pulsed nature focus was on the freshwater pulses. And as we know, the Everglades has many pulses. And more frequently, we're seeing pulses from storms, as well as marine pulses and presses through sea level rise. And then there are these episodic disturbances like droughts and fires, some of which are managed, some of which are non-managed. But basically, the Everglades is a very pulsy system. And as it turns out, many ecosystems are pulsed in nature. And moving forward into FCE, we're starting to explore those pulses as well as other LTER sites that have that pulsed nature. So I wanted to just share the conceptual framework that we spent so long developing when we were writing the proposal. And it really is the guiding framework for where we are moving in FCE 4. And so you'll see 4 different icons that are nested or identifying 4 thematic areas that are nested within our framework. So I'll start at the center, which is ecosystem structure and functions. And those are really the core data that we collect, which are grouped either by vegetation, so primary production, so plants, consumers, the ones that are moving and feeding in the system, the organic matter and microbial communities that are dominating in our system, both in periphyton, in soil, and in the water column. And then the abiotic resources and stressors, which are predominantly the water, the nutrients, salinity that's changing. And these come together to influence carbon fluxes, which over time influence the storage of carbon and the development or the trajectory of our ecosystems in coastal South Florida. So the theme ecosystem structure and function is a mixture of different scientists, students, PIs, and collaborators. And nested within that is our ecological landscape group, which is looking both at how hydrologic connectivity and consumer-mediated nutrient transport are influenced and influencing along this gradient from freshwater marshes to mangroves to seagrass and marine systems. So further nested within that is what we're calling the social landscape, which influences the water that we receive in South Florida, the management of water. We call that water governance or freshwater governance, and the cultural and economic values that people have related to water management, flood control versus maintaining healthy ecosystems with ecosystem services. Those three components feedback onto our exogenous drivers, which are hydrologic presses and pulses, which is basically the changing climate that we are experiencing in many systems, not the least of which in South Florida. But those are feedbacks that we're studying at the climate level and downscaling climate inputs into our regional ecosystems. So our real overarching question in FCE is how are fresh and marine hydrologic pulses interacting with other long-term changes and disturbances to influence ecosystem trajectories. And we're studying that through these 4 thematic focal groups. And we hope to have weekly FCE all webinars where leaders and participants of each focal area, research focal area, will present data, talk about challenges, talk about new interesting insights, and basically just share the science as we progress into FCE 4. So I'm gonna end there, but I do have additional slides that talk about certain pulses, and Jim, if you wanted to, I have even this slide that might be nice for you to talk about if you wanted to talk about with fluxes. And I can share my screen for you, anyone that needs to. So, Jim, would you like to go next?
Sure. I have to admit that I was not planning on being here today because I was planning on being in the field for the first time since March, and that fell through. So I'm showing up completely unprepared, which is pretty much what I've done my entire life anyway. So I said earlier, I'm a biogeochemist and a community ecologist. And most of the work I've done is in seagrasses, and that's the community that's underwater. So about a third of Everglades National Park is actually marine, and it's the interaction with the marine community. We have this what we call an upside down system here. Most coastal systems, nutrients are supplied from the watershed to the coastal zone, but in our case, the ocean actually has much more phosphorus in it than the inputs from fresh water. So we have an ecosystem that's driven by phosphorus that is largely of marine origin. So my role in FCE is twofold. The first is my lab organizes the marine end field trips. So if you want to collect periphyton across the marine end member, or macroalgae, or water chemistry, or whatever, then you work through my lab and my lab manager, because she runs the every 2-month boat trips out to measure seagrass productivity. One thing I think, if you don't really know LTER all that well, this program, they really value long-term data sets. So in my realm, the long-term data sets that my lab works to contribute to FCE are seagrass production rates and cover and abundance estimates, and nitrogen and phosphorus availability as assessed through N to P ratios of the primary producers. So I do that kind of. That's the reason many of you may need to get a hold of me in my lab, because you need to get it in the marine end member. But also with Sparkle Malone, I'm helping run our new emphasis on cross-ecosystem fluxes. And John, if you'll put your slide back up, just so that people don't have to look at me, I'll just say a few things about this. All right. These 3 cartoons are actually probably what I want you to pay attention to. So we know that there are cross-ecosystem movements of not only carbon, but also nitrogen and phosphorus and animals and all kinds of things. And that those cross-ecosystem fluxes are really important in determining the structure and the function of all of the subcomponents of the Everglades ecosystem. We've got an emphasis in, see these, oh, you can't see my pointer, in how things flow from left to right across the individual cartoon boxes. You know, how does stuff come in from the ocean and get translated up into the marsh? And how does water come in from the marsh and gets translated out into the ocean? And then everything that's born within them. And we've had an emphasis on measuring concentrations of the important aspects of water chemistry in the water flowing in from both sides and the water that's in each of these components. But we haven't to date had a very much of an emphasis on how it moves across and how that forms structure. So that's a main thrust, and we need students that are interested in those ideas. One of the kind of cool things about South Florida and the FCE is it's so oligotrophic that in the right-hand panel there, the Seagrass Marine might be the best place to talk about this. The movement of animals, the feeding of animals in one place, and the elimination of waste by those animals in other places has a really large impact on the communities that we see, both in the marshes and in the mangroves and in the seagrass meadows. So we have not only dissolved and particulate stuff born in the water, but we have self-propelled organic matter, as I think Mike Heithaus coined years ago, moving stuff around in directional ways. And with FCE4, we're also moving into a renewed emphasis on the atmosphere ecosystem coupling. So we're in the middle of marshes and mangroves and seagrasses, and these are the communities that have been identified by the Blue Carbon Initiative. And there's a tremendous amount of scientific work going on over the last 5 or 10 years trying to understand the role that these coastal ecosystems play in global carbon dynamics and in climate change. And there's the general thought out there that marshes and seagrasses and mangroves have more carbon stored in them per square meter than most other ecosystems. And that's thanks to that anoxic sediments, anoxic soils that lay underneath it. And the world has spent a lot of time in the last 10 years measuring stocks of carbon, but in these ecosystems, but they haven't really concentrated on what's important for climate change mitigation. And that is the flux of CO2 from the ecosystem into the atmosphere. So in these cartoons, you see that in each of our flagship ecosystem components, we're putting effort into measuring those vertical fluxes from the atmosphere to the seagrasses and back and back again. So one thing that's come out recently, I'll talk a bit about the seagrasses here for a second. There's a lot of carbon in them, but my graduate students and my postdocs have challenged me about, just because they have a lot of carbon, are they really all that important in fluxes of carbon between the atmosphere and the ecosystem? Because of two things, actually mainly one thing, that is concomitant with primary production in South Florida across the system. We also generate a lot of carbonate. We're a limestone factory. And because we're a limestone factory, because we're this limestone factory, in kind of a counterintuitive process, making a limestone actually, even though you're making a solid inorganic carbonate mineral, that it returns CO2 to the water in the atmosphere. And my students have done work showing that in the marine end of our system, there are 3 times more moles of inorganic carbon being built up in our soils than moles of organic carbon, which means that there's a signal of CO2 out that overwhelms the signal of CO2 in to fuel the net autotrophy of the system that we know is there. So the first year of our marine eddy flux data, that tower that's sitting right there, are showing that the middle of Florida Bay, despite it being net autotrophic, is actually a source of CO2 to the atmosphere almost all the time. Our mangroves are the king. They are a net source, a net sink of CO2 measured by our eddy flux towers. And then the marshes go back and forth depending on how long the water residence time and the hydro period is. So I'll wrap up by saying we are excited that you guys are here. We're hoping that you're interested in the things that are central to these questions in the LTER, and talk to me if you need a boat to get out into the marine environment. Thanks.
Awesome, thanks, Jim. How about, why don't we switch things up and jump to Kevin?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John, and thanks, James. Yeah, so my work, as a PI involves kind of, leading what's commonly referred to in shorthand as like human dimensions type work. But what we're specifically looking on is sort of evaluation, both economic and cultural evaluation, and governance dynamics, water governance dynamics, as John mentioned. And so we're looking, this going forward over the next 4 years, we're looking at a couple kind of different things. One is that we're using quantitative and qualitative methods to examine the different kinds of economic and cultural valuations attached to various forms of environmental qualities and processes. And so, as Chloe mentioned during the introductions, she's using economic analysis to examine and kind of project potential environmental impacts of different kinds of incentives and stuff like that. That's one of the main things we're doing with our quantitative, work looking into economic values attached to different kinds of ecosystem services and different kinds of governance strategies. And then we're also folding in qualitative methods as well, because qualitative research examines how different kinds of features and environmental processes and environmental conditions become linked to sort of land users' identity. And this is a source of a lot of tensions in water politics and restoration politics throughout sort of South Florida. This refers to, very broadly, the way that, certain kinds of environmental conditions, your ability to go out and do certain things, like your ability to go out and farm certain areas of land, this becomes a part of your sense of self, a part of, the way that you think about how you are, what your place in the world is, that kind of thing. And so any effort to sort of adjust these conditions, for example, if you build a bridge or something that then, restores flow and winds up flooding, sort of your farmland, you see that as an attack on yourself. It's not just something where, you can go in and, use economic incentives to buy out the land, but it's an attack on yourself, it's an attack on your sense of identity. And so this is something that, a lot of work in the past has, in FCE, FCE2 in particular, and a little bit in FCE3, but we're sort of revitalizing this and bringing it into conversation with the quantitative economic work on ecosystem services as well. So that's one aspect we're looking at. And then the other aspect is looking at how these different kinds of values filter into and impact water governance processes. And so here, when we're talking about governance, we're talking about governance in a very particular way. It points to basically the process of decision making. How are government plans sort of developed and implemented, not only within sort of state agencies, but through broader connections that link state agencies with private sector actors, with broader public, with scientific experts. How do all of these different actors that are involved in the very sort of dense and complex sort of management process, how do they interact? That's what governance kind of gets at. And so the way that we're thinking about governance, we're sort of disaggregating governance using a lot of work in recent political geography and international relations, which is sort of where my basis is. I'm a political geographer by training, so we're using some of this work on governance to disaggregate governance down into a lot of different factors, like who are the actors involved, what are the institutions involved, both formal and informal institutions, and cultural norms, that kind of thing. What are the different forms of knowledge that circulate throughout these governance networks? What are the techniques of sort of an intervention that you can use to implement various kinds of environmental management plans? And what forms of power and authority circulate within water governance networks and legitimate different kinds of decisions? I think this last one here, the focus on authority, is what sort of the work that I'm personally sort of doing with a couple grad students and a postdoc going forward. And this is something that we tend to assume that authority comes from the objectivity of science. That scientific research will identify rational management strategies that will produce optimal outcomes, and then the task for the state policymakers is to take up science and fold that into environmental management practices. And so, this is, you can see how that fits in then with some of the work on ecosystem service valuation. You identify, that can feed into a cost-benefit analysis that can determine the optimal sort of governance solution, governance strategy. But one of the things about environmental politics in South Florida is that it's not always shaped by science. A lot of the trajectory of restoration over the last 20 years since CERP, and even going back to the debates over the restudy process in the 1990s, show that sort of science hasn't always been very closely involved. And one of the interesting things about Everglades restoration is that in recent years, a lot of water management decisions have been drawn much more explicitly on science rather than sort of wider political dynamics. And so that itself is something that's fascinating, that kind of goes against a lot of trends that you're seeing in environmental management in other areas. So this is something that we're kind of looking at. And so, how is it that science has come to sort of play, sort of a more sort of impactful role after it's been sidelined for a while, and after sort of certain very narrow visions of science, sort of play that role within discourses of legitimacy. And so, this is something that we're going to be looking at, and it involves sort of looking at and situating governance of water management and governance more broadly within the wider history of sort of local politics and wider cultural dynamics within the region. And so this is something that we're bringing in some work that we've been doing, some preliminary work in FCE 4.1 that kind of looks at and examines how environmental management, and in South Florida more broadly, not only the Everglades, but environmental management strategies have oftentimes been oriented around not disturbing what we can think of in the literature on sort of critical race theory as not disturbing white comfort. So this is something that, sort of an important dimension of that work on cultural evaluation that hasn't gotten a lot of attention yet. The way that management decisions have always been focused on protecting white and white identifying, sort of values and promoting those through environmental management. And so this is something we've been looking at with the resilience dynamics in Miami-Dade County and resilience planning dynamics in Miami-Dade County. And so it's something that we're going to look at moving forward, is the way that legacies of racial segregation and anti-Black violence that have shaped the city throughout its development during the Jim Crow era, how that then has filtered into wider environmental management issues and debates and struggles, and the way that those sort of the way those sort of politics get built into, played out, and contested through environmental management. So that's where we're sort of looking to take this in 4.2.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. We're really glad to have your insight and leadership on FCE4. And we had it in FCE3, but good to have you here again.
A little bit different context.
Yeah, but it's exciting and important. Jen, you've done some ecosystem service evaluation at the landscape scale. Why don't you talk about what you're excited about? And I have some of the cool
do you have the food web diagrams there? You can pop up.
Yeah, I have the movement figure and the food web diagram. I'll just share.
Yeah, that'd be great. I had it here, but if you have it, that's perfect.
Yeah, sure.
So the work that I'm leading along with Jim and collaborating with Kevin on the human dimensions of our consumers and our food webs, and with Joel Trexler and Jimmy Nelson at University of Louisiana, and our postdoc who's leading the charge on the sampling, Ryan Rezek, is this idea of the food web. Can everybody see that food web diagram? That's beautiful. We look at it just whenever I have a bad day, I just pop it up and be like, okay, let's look at our food web. You guys like it?
Looks great.
You like it? Nice,
yes.
Thanks, Chloe. So you can see we added a fishing vessel, thinking of some of your work, and bringing in the recreational fisheries and the ecosystem services through those feedbacks that Kevin was describing, or trying to going from those services and the quality of the services, for instance, among others, recreational fisheries that our coastal waters are producing within FCE, and that feedback to water governance that Kevin mentioned. That's sort of another really important part and really exciting part of our proposal. So as you can see here, our focus in our group and our working group and with all the collaborations is on food webs. And this is a diagram that we spend many months, maybe a couple months, right, John? Sort of highlighting and describing our hypotheses of food web structure and those linkages. So what you're seeing in green are channels that are green channels that are sort of if you go down, those are the sources of the food web at those circles at the bottom that John is highlighting. And we have brown channels that are detrital based and green channels of the food web. And then in white, you see arrows for consumers that are relying on both. And this is obviously a caricature. We like to refer this to the least wrong food web. It makes us feel good. Any depiction of a food web is incomplete and erroneous by definition, because it's a caricature of many processes and many connections that are, that we cannot all characterize. But we're trying to get the highlights on the most important channels. So our goal in FCE 4.2 is to understand variation, both spatial and temporal, across those circles at the bottom, those sources of energy, and understand what fuels the food web and how variable it is. Are we talking about green food webs? Are we talking about brown food webs? Are we talking about food webs that switch between green and brown across space or time, seasonally, or as a function of disturbance events? And so that's a big focus. I would say that's a primary focus of our work that we have laid out for the future, and we're using stable isotopes, and this involves lots of people because getting data on all these consumers and all their sources is sort of like a village of samples that people are giving us. And then we're focused, as Jim described, on, as you can see from the top, the focus is on those large consumers and their ability to translocate those nutrients across ecosystem boundaries, especially in the context of, as Jim mentioned, the system being so oligotrophic. So we're thinking these contributions of both where animal biomass is being transferred, and then the excretion associated with the biomass of those animals, or where they end up in the landscape, matters a lot, and likely leads to feedbacks where you have future movement of animals, the future congregations driven by the movements that we had in the past, because those are basically fertilizing the ecosystem in certain spots. So that's another focus. So we have this movement section of our work, and then we have the food web structure and that variation that we want to capture, and then that linkage back to the ecosystem services that Kevin described. So that's largely our focus. We're super excited. We've been wanting to do this, sort of really delve into food webs and sort of, with a concerted effort, and we've never been able to do that. And thanks to the support of John and Evelyn, we've been able to delve into it with our full attention. So this is really exciting. I think that's all I wanted to say, maybe.
Jen, thanks. When Evelyn and I received, when we spoke with the program officer, John Shade, that was one of the first things he mentioned was, oh, that figure, you're going to be using that for years. And I thought, well, good, because we spent so much time and money making it. Finally, they loved it.
That's awesome.
But it is such a good tutorial.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you can see, we work with a graphic designer and artist to make those figures, the one that Jim showed and this one. And they're expensive. So I think our figure cost, $4,000, $5,000. But, and we spend, our postdoc, Ryan, spent all this time collating the best information and making his figure, his version of the figure that collates those nutrient sources or the sources of energy for all the consumers. And then we brought that forward to the artist. And then we had several meetings with Evelyn joined at the board. Here's what diatoms should look like. And then the artist, the graphic designer sort of taking that into consideration and making it beautiful. So that was really fun to do.
Yeah, and I should mention that the same artist, made the figure that Jim was referring to with the fluxes. Hiram did that after the food web diagram with Jim and Sparkle and Evelyn and I and others. So, yeah. Excellent. We have about 10 minutes left. I don't know if we want to just have a wrap up, or do the students have any questions of the PIs or of other students?
Maybe Chloe could show, she has a slide that has the e-board composition, and you can see who your current leaders are. And I know you guys are thinking about recruiting new leadership in the coming year. So maybe we could talk about opportunities in the student group for students throughout the FCE and within our broader network. Cool, thanks, Chloe.
Oh, great, awesome. Okay, thanks. I wasn't sure if I had to show mine or this. Okay, so actually I'm gonna just send something in the chat now. So for all new students, the link that I just sent in the chat is the link that you have to use to get into the FCE group. You just fill out, or the FCE student group. You just fill out all of your information and then you're automatically added, or I think maybe Mike adds everyone, right? I'm not sure, but yeah, so. Yeah. You follow the link that I just sent you, you can actually officially become a member of the FCE student group. But I just wanted to say welcome to everyone. We're really excited to have you. This isn't our normal functioning, first meeting, so I'm really glad we were able to do this virtually. But just to put a few faces with some names, our president is John Rodeman. He's in the left-hand corner here, and that is his email. I'm the vice president, Selena, who's currently on the call as the secretary. Mason Bradbury is the treasurer, and Luke Watton is not on the board anymore, but he does help us so much, and he's so passionate about this group, so he's also a great source of information. I just wanted to put all of our information up so that new students could either screenshot this or make a note or write down any of these emails in case they have any questions, or if they want to maybe establish some new programs that they want to start at the FCE student group, any ideas that they have. We are open and really excited to listen to all of them. But yeah, as Evelyn said, we're currently in the process of changing our leadership. Things are, again, a little bit different because of coronavirus. So usually would have done this over the summer, but it kind of threw everything out of whack, and we're regrouping now after a summer away and a summer kind of separated. So we're currently figuring out the new e-board, but if you're interested in leadership in there, also let me know and we can maybe add you to the elections survey we're going to be sending out in a couple weeks. But also I just wanted to mention that a few of the events that we normally have when things aren't isolated or social events, going to trivia nights, going to networking events, and at the local bar on campus at FIU called Vicky's. For a long time, we would do that every first Friday of the month, but now because of coronavirus, we've been having to figure out maybe some online versions of all of these networking kind of things. So over the course of the summer for a while, or at the end of the last semester, we were doing a thing called Research and Chill, where one student would present their research or present an idea for research, a quick 10-minute presentation, and then we would all feedback and talk about it and discuss it and ask questions. So that's just one thing that we've been doing. I think we're hoping to do some more maybe virtual happy hours so where people can just meet and talk about new research, talk about just their lives in general and how they're doing through quarantine. And also I think we want to start back up the FCE Research and Chill. So yeah, those are just a few virtual things we're going to be doing this semester. And hopefully when we all get to come back together someday soon, we can do some more happy hours at Vicky and at MIA Brewery like we've been doing for the past, or that we did last semester. So yeah, so again, just follow that link that I sent in the chat to officially register as a member of the FCE student group. But also if you know anybody in your lab or anybody that goes to FIU, or even that doesn't go to FIU but isn't in the student group, everyone is welcome. I was able to recruit a few people from FAU last semester, and it's cool to have people from all different schools and walks of life, all different schools here. So please feel free to share that link with anyone. And thanks. Also, I just wanted to say, Kevin, I'm really excited about the social side of the new FCE proposal. I mean, the new FCE, initiatives. That's really, really cool. I'm really excited to see what we all come up with. It's really awesome.
Yeah, thanks, Chloe. Me too. It's exciting to sort of revitalize this work.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you, Chloe. I did want to briefly mention that, I didn't give a full overview of what the FCE program is. That would take a long time to present that, but we are a large network of collaborators. There's like 160 collaborators, many students. I'm not sure the number offhand of students, but we have students at both of our MMC and BBC campus, and Nicole Strickland is the rep for the BBC campus, and Ryan James was the rep for the off-site rep in Jimmy Nelson's lab at University of Louisiana. And so we'll be looking to replace Ryan. Maybe the e-board already has people in mind, but it's nice to have those folks. And I think despite COVID, I think we can do more with Zoom to connect people in a way that we're now familiar with. So thank you, students. You are the heart and soul of our program.
I had a couple of things that came to mind too. Yeah, like John said, and Jen and everyone, boy, you guys are amazing and you're so productive. And the work that you do is just a bulk of the productivity that we take pride in about our program. It's just really incredible. And there's all kinds of opportunities for sharing the products of your work within, across these 160 collaborators that John mentioned and outside of our LTER program through the LTER network. So we are one of 28 sites within a large network supported by the National Science Foundation. So there's sites all over the country and in French Polynesia and down in Antarctica. And they all have student groups and lots of students working on really exciting things involving long-term data and long-term research. And you'll get to know a little bit more about those other programs through a network all scientists meeting. And that usually happens every 3 years. And the next one would be scheduled for fall of 2021. We're not sure yet, given the circumstances of COVID, whether or not that meeting would happen next fall, but hopefully. And we always have a wonderful showing of, 20, 25 students at that meeting. And that's just a really neat place to share your science with others and to hear about what's going on at other sites. And if it doesn't happen next fall, it'll happen the following fall. Apparently, they really want to have this in person, so and not a virtual meeting. So look forward to opportunities like that. The network also makes available different kinds of opportunities for students to come together to lead things, like cross-site studies. So often you find that there are people studying the kinds of things that you do in the Everglades and other, there's other coastal LTER programs, there's other programs studying pulses. John talked about the importance of pulses and the FCE and the focus of our proposal on that, and he's leading a really neat working group that's looking at that across other kinds of programs that are regulated by pulses. And that's just an example of a kind of theme and research that can be studied across place. And the network office, which is hosted over at University of California, in Santa Barbara, and there's a wonderful team there that leads up the network office. There's a link. Thank you, John, for providing that, and you can go there and see where all these other sites are and what the opportunities are. But many of our students, I know Erin has been involved in these, have participated in these kind of cross-site activities, and often those find funding through the network office. So please look for opportunities to do that. And they're always super excited to see proposals led by students. And right now there is a call for synthesis proposals for bringing together big ideas across place and across researchers and different programs. Just a couple of other notes that I was thinking about, another way of sharing the products of your research, whether it's publications or new proposals that you've gotten, or just news from the field. We have our News from the Sloughs blog, and new students particularly, we really like you to participate in that. And when you get your field work going in particular, that's always nice to share some photos from the field and experiences from the field through the News from the Sloughs blog. We have Wading Through Research is the name of the blog. And then the News from the Sloughs is our newsletter that comes out every month. And we always have a highlight of students in that. And so please just let us know if you have something really exciting that's coming out in publication or something that you've done recently. We'll share it with everybody through that. As Chloe mentioned, do invite your friends, other people in your lab who may be new to the FCE. Make sure that they're aware of how to connect through registering themselves. And once you do that, you'll be part of the FCE All listserv, where the news comes out, as well as connected to the network level opportunities that way. And you'll also be part of an FCE students listserv, where the students often share different opportunities that they hear about. Just lastly, as John mentioned, we're going to try to have these weekly opportunities for learning about research across the different themes of the FCE program. Hopefully students would take up leadership occasionally in those meetings and share the work that they're doing. And then we'll be having a all scientists meeting for the FCE program, probably sometime in November, and that'll have to be virtual. But we always have time for students to give a little overview of what they're working on, whether it's a kind of poster overview or a 3-minute abstract or something like that. We'll have to be creative with that, and we'll involve you in figuring out what that'll look like. So that's it. I know we're over, but I wanted to mention those opportunities. Anybody have any questions or anything to add? Is that a hand from Erin? Or? or just a wave?
No, good job clapping. Thanks,
Great.
thanks, Ev. Good job.
Cool.
Thanks. Well, everyone have a good fall and stay tuned for when we hold the weekly thematic research webinars. And let us know how we can help during this time and anytime.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all here.
Yeah, stay safe.
Thanks, guys.